Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, The Estimating Process in 4 Steps. My name is Mike Eby, Group Editorial Director for EC&M, and I'll serve as the moderator for today's event. Before we get started, I've got some tips to share with you about this webinar technology. This platform allows you to customize your webcast console. So you can move windows around by dragging on the title bar or resize the window by clicking on the lower right corner and expanding it. There's also a toolbar at the bottom of the console. These buttons allow you to open and close different widgets on your screen. So if at any time you experience difficulties with the audio or advancing of slides, you can also press your F5 key and this will refresh your webinar console. This should clear up most problems. We also encourage you to ask questions at any time during the Q&A session, and you can do this via the Q&A widget. If a question comes up during the session and you want to go ahead and submit it early and get it in the queue, you can do that too. And we'll address as many questions at the end of the presentation today. We also appreciate your feedback, so please click on the survey icon and complete the form before the end of today's session. And lastly, if you're interested in receiving a certificate of attendance, you can click on that item in the resource list at the bottom of your screen. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. Don Kiper serves as president of Estimating 101, an electrical estimating consulting and training business. With 42 years experience in the electrical industry as an electrician, estimator, estimating manager, and project manager, he brings the best practices and outcomes for estimating electrical projects. In just over 4 years, Don has provided training for more than 80 contractors and trained more than 225 estimators, project managers, and owners. He is a published author of several books about estimating philosophy and a Trimble AccuBid Classic estimating software. He's recently co-authored a 6-volume set of estimating manuals with Giovanni Marcelli, founder of AccuBid Systems, now Trimble MEP. He's a member of ASPE, which is the American Society of Professional Estimators. He currently lives in Niagara Falls, Ontario with his wife of 44 years, and they have 4 daughters and 3 grandchildren. Rochelle Weiss is the Marketing and Sales Integration Process Manager for GE Industrial Solutions Acquisition. In this role, she plays a key part in creating the best portfolio and sales tools to support the U.S. electrical market. Rochelle has been with ABB for more than 10 years. She joined the company as a senior project manager for tie wrap cable ties through Thomas & Betts acquisition. She has more than 20 years of experience in product development and management in the electrical industry. And she has a strong passion for solution-based product development and a commitment to customer service. She currently lives in Memphis, Tennessee with her husband and 3 daughters. So with those introductions and housekeeping items behind us, it's now time for me to turn this over to Don and let him take it away.
Thanks, Mike. Glad to have everybody here today to talk about the 4 steps and the basic steps of estimating. So let's jump right in. We're going to cover a lot of ground today to see if we can help you put some structure and some organization to the process. So there are basically 4 steps, 4 big steps in estimating. First is estimate preparation, performing the takeoffs, the extension and the review, and putting together a bid summarization. So if you study estimating, and I've studied it, you will spend approximately 85% of your time utilizing software. So the estimate preparation time is about 15%. The takeoff time is about 65%, and the extension and review is about 15%, and the bid summary about 10%. So if you break this down, you can analyze exactly what you're doing and get as good as you can. So let's see if we can learn today the importance of a sequence, a proper estimating sequence order, how to check an estimate, and understand all of the components of labor. Estimating is like throwing a dart. Accuracy is the goal. That's why a dartboard is part of my company logo. ultimate priority of an estimator is to be as accurate as they possibly can be. If you're going to be a good estimator, you're going to have to certainly understand the purpose of an estimate. The purpose of an estimate is twofold. First of all, that allows the contractor to enter into a contractual agreement with confidence. When an owner signs on the bottom line of a contract, he wants to have confidence that his estimator has been as accurate and detailed as possible. And then the second purpose of an estimate is should be well organized and detailed, that it provides a plan to the foreman and the project manager to execute the project profitably. Hopefully, all contractors are in business to be profitable. So a standardized estimating sequence is essential, because unless you have a sequence, you'll bounce around and you'll hit and miss. A good sequence will increase your speed, your accuracy, and make you much more consistent. Consistent procedures equal consistent results. If you'll follow a recipe, you'll produce the same dish or barbecue every time you follow that recipe. So there's some benefits of having a great sequence that matches your company and your market. Let me make sure I say this. Don Kiper doesn't claim to know everything, but I do claim to be a student of electrical estimating, and in my quest to be the best estimator and trainer that I can be, I have dedicated myself to study the process to arrive at the best, most efficient, most accurate outcomes possible. So the sequence I'm going to give you, I'm not saying it fits your market, fits your company, fits your geographic location, but what I am going to challenge you is take the sequence as a basis and modify it to make it match your company, your market, to help you to be as accurate and detailed as possible. So when you have a good sequence, you'll increase your confidence in your work, you'll increase your speed, and you'll have a greater production for your estimating department. You'll increase your organization, you'll increase your accuracy, and you'll reduce your estimating omissions. And it will give you confidence when you enter into the bid summarization process. So the sequence I'm going to give you is broken down in basically 4 big components: the prep, the takeoff, the extension, and checking the estimate, and then putting together a bid summarization. And your company may have very numbered of steps. You may not adopt all of these that I present, and that's fine. If it doesn't fit your market and what you do, then you find one that does. So take this sequence and adopt it, modify it, and make it work for what you do. So let's first talk about estimate preparation. Let me back up for a second, and let me just say this. In the workshops that I've conducted and on-site training, I ask the question, what is the first thing you do in preparing an estimate? And I invariably have many people say, well, the first thing I do is count light fixtures. Well, if I was grading you on that test, I would give you a failing mark on that answer, because the first thing that you do in preparing an estimate is not count light fixtures, because I've identified in this sequence 13, you may have 14, you may have 12. But I can assure you there are many estimate preparatory steps that an estimator needs to take in order to be well organized, efficient, accurate, and detailed. So the first thing is you want to create a project folder on your estimating drive with a new project template. Templates are a great way to save, and I'll show you a layout that I've used for years. So we're going to take and create this template. We're going to copy and paste it. Then we're going to rename it. We're going to give it a new project name. And so I break my projects down by addenda, by bid form, by bonding forms, drawings. And you can see that the drawings I even break down for architectural, landscape. If you're bidding a project with 40, 50, 60, 70 sets of drawings, you're going to want to organize these and not have to scroll through dozens or hundreds of drawings in order to find what you're looking for. Same way in the specifications. I have a spec folder, but I also break it down by Division 1, Divisions 2 through 25, and then I break out Divisions 26, 27, and 28. So I can isolate those electrical spec sections so I can provide those spec sections to my suppliers and get the exact quotes, and I can review them to make sure that I get it right. So I'm going to create this folder. I'm going to rename it. Then I'm going to obtain my contract documents. Some people are still getting hard copies. A lot of people are just downloading the plans and the specs. And we would download those into our project folder and arrange them. Third step I do is I create an estimate number. It may be in your software. You have a numbering system, and most softwares, estimating software, will allow you to create a project number. Maybe you have a notebook in your estimating room, and you have an estimate log where you record it. Some companies I've seen, I've had blackboards and whiteboards, and they lay out the estimates on the wall board. However you do it, you ought to have a good record of the number of projects you're estimating and who's estimating what. Maybe you want to create a digital file, but somewhere you need to record the number. The fourth thing that I do is I set up an estimate book. Now, I set up my estimate books in hard copy. I know people are doing this digitally, whatever works for you and whatever's functional. I had 8 tabs in my 3-ring binder, and you can see the tabs listed across there, where I took my invitations to bid, my RFQs, my proposals. On the second tab, I had my spec notes and my RFIs. My tab number 3, I put my addendas. I put my estimate in tab number 4. Once the job was all done, I printed my bid summary, placed all of my my supplier quotations in tab number 6, and then if I had any scribbly notes or any takeoff sheets or any manual calculations I had done, I placed it in that 7th tab, and then if I had printed some specific spec sections, I put those in the last section. Now, the beauty of having a printed hard copy of your estimate book and having it all organized, I can count more than the number of fingers that I have on both of my hands. In the years that I estimated, that I would go into work and the president would come in my office and say, "Don, I got a call late yesterday that the owner wants us to come in for a de-scope meeting and a bid review." Well, if you have this all organized and printed in a 3-ring binder and well organized, all you have to do is pick up your binder off of your shelf in your office, and you can walk out the door and go to a de-scope meeting and a review meeting. Look very professional, very organized. If you've got it all digitally, that's fine. You just may have to scramble to print some of this information. I believe, you may not, but I believe whenever I go to a de-scope meeting, I'm going to go and give the owner every answer he wants to know. I'm not leaving any of my information back in my office, tell him I'll get back with him. No, I want to go and write a contract. So having an estimate book, however you do it, keeping your estimate well organized is a great way to be accurate and efficient. Fifth thing I do is I place the pre-bid meeting date and the bid date on my calendar. I use the Outlook calendar. I use the calendar on my cell phone. But as soon as I get the estimate, I want to put those dates on my calendar so I know exactly where I'm going to be on my schedule. Sixth thing I do is if this is a bonded project and I got to get a bonding request into the bonding company, you have to get those in early because you don't want to wait to the last minute, and make sure you can get a bond and get all the information. Seventh thing I do is I'm going to review the project to figure out exactly how long I think it's going to take me to estimate this project. I believe if you're an honest estimator and if you're a good estimator, you should be able to figure out how long it's going to take you to estimate a specific project. And when your boss or your chief estimator asks you to estimate something, you should be able to let him know that you will be able to complete that estimate in a timely fashion. If you don't think you can, you should tell him right away that you need some help, or you don't think you can get it all done in a timely manner. My rule of thumb, working with my methodology, my database, and my AccuBid software, I estimated about an hour and a half to 2 hours per takeoff drawing. Now, I didn't count detailed drawings. I counted the floor plans, the lighting plan, the branch power, the systems. I also included the one-line diagram. And so I would add those drawings up. If I had 10 drawings, I could probably complete that estimate in about 12 to 13, maybe 15 hours. That would include reviewing the spec, sending out my quotes, estimating it, putting it all in, and putting it all together. But you'll do yourself a great service to try to track how long it takes you to perform estimates. Your per drawing may be different than mine. You may be able to do it in an hour per drawing. That's fine. If you can do it in an hour per drawing, a half an hour, you just make sure that you can get it done in a timely fashion. The eighth thing I do is I'm going to review the bid form. I haven't counted any light fixtures yet, so I'm going to review the bid form. I'm going to see if I have a lump sum bid. I'm going to check to see if I have any alternates, add or deduct alternates. I'm going to look for any allowances on the bid form. Many times there are unit prices that a contractor may have to submit. He may have to submit a unit price for a receptacle, for 3/4 inch conduit with 4 number 12s in it. But if you're an estimator, you know what I'm talking about, unit prices. So I want to look at all of these things on the bid form. Many bid forms will ask for cost saving, value engineering, and gives you an opportunity to offer cost savings. I've seen bid forms that require a list of all the subcontractors you're going to use, list of the manufacturers of all the supplied equipment like the switchgear, generators, light fixtures. So a good review of the bid form. Now, when I was a young estimator, this is how I learned how to do this first before I did anything. I didn't look at the bid form, and I just started counting and estimating and quantifying. I got ready to call in my price, and the contractor, the general contractor said, "What do you have for alternates 1 and number 2?" And I went, "Alternate who?" And he said, "There are 2 alternates. You do have a price for them, don't you?" Well, those alternates were not defined on the set of drawings, but those alternates were defined in the front end of the specification. So you'll do yourself a great service to review that bid form before you start counting anything. Then I'm going to review Division 1, the front end of the spec. I'm going to look for a summary and a scope of the work. I'm going to look for the payment clause to see if there's any concern. They say they pay all of their bills within 2,000 days. It might be a problem if you bid a job that you're not going to get paid for a year. I'm going to look for an accelerated schedule as I'm looking the front end. Accelerated schedule can be labor intensive. So I'm looking for all these key things in the front end, phasing requirements. When I say phasing, I mean the owner may want the first floor done in May, the second floor done in June, and the third floor done in August. So phasing is very important. If you're mobilizing, demobilizing, moving in and out of an area, you need to know that before you start counting and measuring anything on a project. You need to look at the work days and the work hours. I did a project one time in a hospital, and it said all work shall be performed between 12 a.m. midnight and 4 a.m. in the morning. They only gave us a 4-hour work window to do the work. Those are complex jobs. You need to know that right away. I'm going to look for any allowances in the front end. I'm going to see if there are any owner-furnished materials. Actually, you can go to EC&M's website. Somewhere I wrote an article some time ago on owner-furnished material. Owner-furnished material can carry an additional 10% labor risk. Be very careful about bidding projects with owner-furnished material. It can be labor-intensive, and it can have all sorts of problems. Now, once I do that front end of the review of the schedule, very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a chat with my chief estimator. because I want to relay to him any payment concerns, if it is an accelerated schedule, whatever the phasing requirements are. Once you've gathered this information, you have to give it to the principals of the company, the chief, the vice president. There may be a decision at that point not to proceed forward with the estimate. If an estimator, it would be a waste of resources, manpower, and money for you to miss one of these key clauses in the front end of a spec, and then you spend the week estimating a project, and then you tell your chief estimator, oh, by the way, we only have 2 months to do this job. We're going to need 30 electricians to get all of this work done. Well, there may not be 30 electricians available to man that job. May not have the foreman to handle that project. So it's vital, I believe it's very vital, that the estimator, before he begins quantifying and counting and measuring, review this and have a chat with the chief estimator. 11th thing I do is I'm going to review divisions 26, 27, and 28 of the electrical specs. Don't ever forget, the contractor's work will be judged by these documents. The engineer is not going to let you buy because he likes you. He's not going to let you buy for any reason. He's going to hold you to the spec and make you meet that spec. The consequences of failing to understand the requirements of the contract are significant. I didn't say in the beginning, but I will say I have made almost every mistake you can make as an estimator. I've made lots of them. But there is one mistake I have not made. I have never bid or estimated a project that was an explosion-proof hazardous location and taken that project off an EMT conduit. But I do know an estimator that did. And so it is vital that the estimator understands how to interpret the specs. The drawings outline the quantity of work. There's 3 questions that estimating should answer. It was in the landing page of the webinar. We're not going to cover a lot of it, but it answers 3 questions. How many? How much do they cost? And how long will it take to install them? So the drawing tells me how many. The project manual or the specs answers how much they're going to cost, because the specs give me the product numbers, the catalog numbers, and it identifies the piece of material. So I look at the drawings, I count, I measure, I look at the specs, and it's going to tell me what the price. In this spec, this division 26 and 27 and 28, each of those spec sections and those divisions are broken down in spec format. This is the CSI 3-part format. There's a general section, there's a product section, and there's an execution. The general section gives you the industry standards, really not a whole lot of information there for the estimator. But there's a second part, and that's the products. That gives you the catalog numbers, manufacturers, what is an equal, what is not acceptable. And then one of the most important sections of an individual spec section is the execution. The execution section of a spec will tell you how it's to be installed. And so the estimator the contractor must install the right specified product in the right manner. That is exactly what the architect, the owner, the inspectors are going to be looking. When you do a walkthrough and a punch list, they're going to make sure you installed it, you installed the right product the way it was supposed to be installed. So the key, in my mind, for specification review is you are looking for wiring and system requirements that must be addressed during the execution of the takeoff and included into the bid summary. So you're looking for products, how to install it, count and measure it accurately when you're taking it off, and then you've got to summarize it with a bid summary, and we'll talk about those components a little bit later. It is very important. Any question to the intent of the specs or the drawings, the estimator must seek clarification. It is vital that you find out. Okay, let me say it to you this way. If you don't know what to estimate and you get the job and you pass the job off to the field, to the foreman, he's not going to know what to install. If you don't know what to estimate, the foreman is not going to know what to install. So if it's a question about what to count and measure and what to price, you've got to seek clarification. And we do this with an RFI, request for information, and that's the way of defending your estimate and making sure that your scope of your work and your estimate is within those contract documents. Many people have challenged me and said, estimating is guesstimating. I do not accept that estimating is guesstimating at all. Estimating is I have a set of contract documents, I have a spec, set of drawings, I'm going to count and measure the quantities, I'm going to look in the spec and get the right product. If I can't figure out what to install and how to install it with those two sets of documents, I have to ask somebody what to do, because contractors are installers, not engineers. The next thing I do is I review the architectural plans. You must know how the building is going to be built. You must understand the slabs, the structure, the wall types, ceiling types, the heights of the ceilings, the distance between the floors. I think I told you I've made every mistake possible you can make. Well, I estimated a project one time and didn't study the architecturals close enough, and the project had precast concrete walls that were going to have box outs for all the devices and the equipment connections, and it was very labor intensive in the field for the electricians to stub up and work with the precast concrete and setting these walls. I blew it on my estimate. It is vital that the estimator understand architectural plans and how to interpret them. Next thing I do, number 13, is I'm going to set up my project and my estimating program, whether you use AccuBid, whether you use ConEst or McCormick, and there are 3 or 4 or 5, leading brands that contractors are using. Most all of them give you some type of a way to structure your estimate. I explain it this way to contractors. I did one this week. If I were to give you $1 million in cash, and I handed you that $1 million in cash all in one box, and it contained hundreds and 50s and 20s and 10s and all sorts of denomination bills and coins, and I said, here's $1 million in cash, you count and verify that it's $1 million. Or if I gave you $1 million in cash, and I gave you a box of $100 bills, I gave you a box of $50 bills, I gave you a box of $20 bills, a box of $10 bills, box of 5 and 1, you get the idea. And I gave you 10 different boxes of all these denominations of bills and coins and asked you to verify it, you could do it a whole lot easier and a whole lot faster if you had that money in 10 different boxes arranged by denominations. Well, you should view your estimate breakdown the same way. The more breakdown and structure you can give by system, by floors, by areas, by schools, by drawing, the greater ability you're going to have to analyze, to check, to bid, to provide the right pricing that you need to price. It is vital. I see it more than almost anything else in contractors I train. They're not properly setting up their jobs in the estimating software. So those are 13 steps in the estimate preparation. So we haven't counted a light fixture yet. So step number 2 is we're going to look into the takeoff. So first thing I do is, if I need to, I'm going to perform all of my package counts for all of my quotations for lighting, for distribution, for my cable tray, fire alarm, security, whatever my packages are. And I'm going to take and get that out the door if I need to right away. Then the 15th thing I'm going to do, the second step in my takeoff process, I am going to perform all of my takeoffs systematically. I'm going to go to the lighting drawings. I'm going to complete the lighting. I'm going to complete the site power. I'm going to do the site lighting, the demolition, and I'm going to go through each of these systems systematically and complete it full and complete. How many times have you, if you're an estimator, you have said after you finish, you said, I'm going to review the drawings one more time to make sure I got everything? Well, you're wasting time. Don't go back one more time. Get it all the first time by systematically making sure you complete every drawing as you move through the estimating process. So it's vital that you estimate systematically. Again, you may not like this protocol. Develop your own protocol that works for you and follow it every time. 16th thing I'm going to do is I'm going to send all of my suppliers the quantities, the schedules, the one-line diagrams for all of my quoted materials, all of my specialty, well, that's another item, all of my items that I need for all these packages. So after completing all of the takeoffs, send your supplier accounts and all the information they need for that quote. Now, the number 14, I told you, do your package counts. Now, if you have time to wait before you send out those counts, get everything counted and measured before you send out the counts the first time. Because if you send them out immediately, you may find onesies, twosies, and now you have to send them out again. So the 16th thing I do is I'm going to make sure my suppliers have all of my quantities and all the schedules. I'm going to involve, number 17, my subcontractors. I'm going to give them a detailed scope of the work. I'm going to give them any related drawings, any related spec sections. I'm going to make sure they have it. Now, those subcontractors, of course, could include, and we'll talk about them in the bid summary, but that could be an excavator, concrete coring, and whatever it may involve. We'll talk about a few of those. Step number 3 is the extension. That's after you've counted and measured, after you've quantified everything. Now you need to check your estimate and review it to make sure you're accurate and you got it all together. Well, so with computerized estimating, we have great ability to analyze an estimate on a live computer screen. So on the extension screen, I can review labor percentages. I can review and determine my risk on the project. I can make adjustments. I can mitigate my project risk. A proper review with the extension screen, and this will allow me to accurately price my material. Of course, there are pricing services like trade service and supplier links, net pricing services. It's going to allow me to look at my labor units and adjust them for the project conditions. I'm going to select an appropriate labor column. Most software will allow you to shift between column 1, column 2, column 3, and or a custom labor column you have. On the extension screen, I can identify all of my quoted items. I can do a breakdown and look at my percentages by system. I can do it by labor categories. I can do it by the installation labor factors, and I can do it by the material categories. Most commercial projects, more than 50% of the material costs will be in wiring, cable, and conduit and fittings. More than 50% of the material costs will be in those two material categories, conduit and fittings, and wiring cable. So properly setting up the job, as I mentioned, is vital, because on the extension screen, you have breakdown options, you have the ability to analyze, you have the ability to review, and you have the ability to create multiple bid summaries. So let's talk about checking the estimate. I have a 5-step process that I go through in checking my estimate. The first thing is I do a document check. I do the takeoff check. I look for omissions. I look for errors. And then I have what I call a benchmark check. So step number 1 is I'm going to check for the documents. I'm going to make sure I've got all of the drawings, all of the sheets, all of the sketches. I'm going to make sure I've got every spec section. I've got a complete specification. I make sure that I have received all addendas that's been issued through the course of the project. And then I'm going to check my takeoff. I'm going to make sure that I've used the proper materials as per the plans and specs and the authority having jurisdiction. I'm going to look at my drawings to make sure I've quantified all of my drawings. I'm going to make sure that I've addressed all of the addenda. Step number one, I made sure I'd received them. Step number two, I'm going to go through my addendas to make sure I have quantified and addressed all of the addenda in my takeoff. I'm going to make sure I've included all the factoring of the labor of these items. Check my hazardous locations. If I bid those type of work, those can be tricky and expensive. I'm going to adjust some PVC conduit labor, and that's a little advanced philosophy, but I want to check to make sure my PVC labor is in line with what it takes to install. Step number three of checking the takeoff, I'm going to look for missing labor units on items. I'm going to look for items without pricing. I'm going to look for owner-furnished items that I failed to include in my estimate. Maybe the spec told you to include, to install some things the owner was going to give you. They may not have been on the drawings. So these are things I'm looking for emissions. It's easy to miss fixture hangers and stems. It's easy to miss unistrut racks for feeders. Easy to forget coring and wall penetrations and fireproofing if that's in your scope of the work. Step number four in checking the estimate, I'm going to look to make sure that my base bid and my alternates are properly separated. Maybe I didn't separate them, and maybe I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to make sure that I haven't included electrical work that's not in my scope. I bid a job one time that showed a site drawing that had trenching for the primary service. It didn't say anything on the drawing about the owner was going to take care of all the excavation and backfill. There was a single sentence in the front end of the spec that stated the owner was going to take care of all the excavation on the site. So be very careful not to include electrical work that's not in your scope. Number three, I'm looking for incorrect quantities, maybe for typical floors or units. If it's a multi-story building, I'm looking for incorrect material pricing, incorrect labor units. I'm going to look to make sure that I've got my material and labor units both set at each per 100 or per 1,000. You don't want to have a price per 1,000 and have a labor unit that should be set at per 1,000 as well, but somehow it got set at per 100. You could be way out of line. I'm going to be looking for quantity errors. I'm going to be looking for duplicated items. I'm going to be looking for incorrect wiring devices. Step number five in checking my estimate, I'm looking for average feet of conduit and wire per device in each system. When I say each system, I mean the lighting system, the fire alarm system, the security system, the receptacles, the branch wiring receptacles. And I'm going to look at those averages. I'm going to look at number two, the average labor hours per device in every system. I reviewed an estimate one time with a client. They had over 7 hours for every light fixture and occupancy sensor in a commercial building. It was way high. They had a serious error. This is a great way of checking your estimates. You'll do yourself a great favor of abandoning square foot analysis. You can use square foot analysis for budgeting, but the great key to reviewing an estimate, in my experience and professional opinion, is reviewing the average labor hours per device per system. I look at the labor hours per square foot on commercial projects. That's of no help on an industrial project, but commercial it can be. I'm also looking on benchmark checks. I'm looking at the average number of conductors in my branch wiring conduits. I'm looking at the average length of my circuits on my equipment connections. I'm looking at my labor percentage by system and my labor codes and installation. So reviewing the check, I'm going to check my documents. I'm going to check my takeoff, my emissions, my errors, and I'm going to look at my benchmark checks. So let's talk about summarizing the estimate. So in the bid summary, it is the estimator's responsibility to provide the chief estimator an accurate, complete takeoff, schedule of phasing information, project labor factors, quoted material, and all the general expenses, equipment rentals and durations, and subcontractor quotes. The best way to minimize your risk and your defense is an accurate, detailed takeoff, and secondly, a complete bid summary. So the bid summary labor components will include your labor classes, journeyman, foreman, apprentices. You're going to have some incidental labor for site meetings. Maybe you've got COVID-19 meetings, stretch and flex meetings. These are as-builts. You're going to have some labor escalation if you got a long duration. Maybe you got to give electricians raises. Indirect labor, maybe a project manager on site, maybe a general foreman on site, depending upon the size of the project. Project labor factors, those are project conditions that affect labor negatively. Most software, this is a screenshot from Trimble AccuBid Classic software. So if you had a project that was spanning a 3-year duration, you can include your percentage of increase on your labor in your bid summary and keep your cost accurate. I'd mentioned to you a project labor factor is a project condition that affects labor negatively. So I'm going to give you just a couple here. There's about 24 that I've identified in the book that I've written, but I believe there's as many as 40 or 50 of these. But these are all conditions: access to the site, accelerated schedule, the building construction, the crew size, the multi-story. All of these project conditions can and will affect the project labor negatively. And so this has to be compensated for in the bid summary. So the bid summary expense, we've got subcontractors, we have general expenses, equipment rentals, quoted packages. I'm going to have some subcontractors, maybe excavation, rock removal, horizontal boring, BIM modeling. General expenses, I may have some permits, inspections, consumables, some per diem and travel, temporary power. Again, every project and different types of projects will have different expenses. So these quoted materials that I'm going to put in for lighting have to be reviewed for completeness. I have to review them for the specified or substituted items, freight charges, delivery dates, cut charges, especially on high voltage cable. Some of these cables have cut charges. Offloading of transformers, generators, large pad mount, transformers. Of course, some projects are taxable, have to review the sales tax, and of course, payment terms. A major mistake in the bid summary can certainly be fatal on bid day. You want to make sure that you've got the bid summary covered. The final price should be a price that you are confident you can make money. Hopefully we're in business to make money, not just to win bids. Whatever your final price is, the final price shouldn't be a moving target. So those are the 4 steps: estimate prep, performing the takeoff, extending and reviewing it, checking it, and then putting together a bid summary. So let's just talk about labor, because labor is so important. So labor is derived from labor units, installation labor factors, and project labor factors, incidental labor, and indirect labor hours. It is vital that you understand how NECA teaches of what a NECA labor 1 column is. Now, most of us that have bid for contractors, we didn't bid competitive work using NECA labor units in a commercial competitive. But I want you to take away something from this exercise that hopefully will help you. Understanding the anatomy of a labor unit is vital. 65% of a labor unit is installation time. 20% is material handling, 5%. Now this 5% supervision is the worker interacting with supervision. This is not supervision, non-working foreman or foreman time. This is the worker interacting with the supervision, and then 10% for layout. So understanding the labor units. So a NECA 1 labor column is based on the project size, the floors, the square foot of the building, and specific conditions. So NECA says a building up to 3 floors, 20,000 to 100,000 square foot per floor. The building is rectangular or square. It's in a local metropolitan area. It's not a prison. It's not in a security building. It's not the TSA. It's not the FBI building where you got to get security clearances. The construction schedule is 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, no overtime, no shift work. It's 600 volts, local utility, all UL listed materials, everything 16 feet and under. You got good engineering, you got complete drawings, you got a realistic schedule. You're furnishing all the material. You got a good supply of electricians. You got all new material. There's no delays, no interruptions. Wow, when's the last time you had a project like this? No harsh weather conditions. This is like the ideal project. So when a project is not categorized by that, my point is when a project is not categorized by those conditions, there needs to be a discussion within the estimating room about labor units and labor adjustments to the bid. I'm not here to tell you which labor column to use. I'm here to tell you if it's a complex job and you're bidding at a very competitive labor unit, you may run out of labor before it's over. So understanding labor is you got to understand the labor unit selection and the components of it. You got to understand the installation labor factors, and those are adjustments to the labor units based on metal stud insulation, masonry, slab, parallel runs. I'm putting it in the trench. These installation labor factors, here's a little chart that gives you some percentages of how we increase labor and adjust the labor unit based on these conditions. I'm going to look at my direct labor. I'm going to put my labor classes. How many foremen do I need on the project? Journeymen, apprentices. I'm going to look at my project labor factors. These are conditions that affect labor negatively, I said. And here's a short list of things that can affect a project negatively. And so these are things we address in the bid summary and understanding labor. Here's a screenshot again that shows lost time at a 15% loss productivity on 100% of the hours, the second column. Maybe you've got weather conditions outside, you're going to lose 20% productivity on 40% of the project. So these are all adjustments the estimator must learn to make. Got to put in some incidental labor, whatever you need, travel time, lost time, site meetings, job scheduling, testing, deficiencies. Then I'm going to look at my indirect labor hours. If I need a project manager on site, I need a foreman, a non-working foreman for the duration. Maybe I got to put a CAD operator, a BIM. So I choose my labor unit. I'm going to add or minus to those labor hours based on the installation labor factors and the conditions. And that gives me my total direct labor hours. And then I'm going to add incidental. I'm going to add indirect. And I'm going to add project labor factors. And that would give me the total hours for the project. So having enough labor dollars is more important than having enough labor hours. But hopefully we have enough labor hours. And I appreciate you joining me today. Thank you very much. And before we take some questions, I'm going to turn it over to Rochelle with ABB.
Thank you so much, Don. That was a great presentation. The ABB product development teams are very aware of how labor and installation costs can impact contractors. We are committed to helping you deliver your high-volume construction projects profitably and efficiently. Hello, everyone. I'm Rochelle Weiss, the U.S. Marketing and Sales Integration Process Manager for ABB. As the integration manager, I have been working closely with the project teams focusing on the release of the new RelyGear Smart Power Distribution products. I want to take a few minutes today to introduce you to that lineup. 2021 will be an exciting year for ABB. Since ABB acquired the GE Gear business in 2018, we have invested over $120 million in U.S. manufacturing, logistics, and product development. During the integration, ABB has combined the best of ABB and GE Industrial Solutions into one all-new lineup. Now we're announcing the release of the RelyGear family of smart power distribution products, which simply offers a better way to power. This family of products, from lighting panel boards to switchgear, is a real game changer for the industry, featuring both smart design and smart technology to create value for your business by lowering installed costs to improve project efficiency and profit. These projects are designed to simplify installation and maintenance while promoting a safer work environment. What does this mean for you? There are 3 key areas where ABB's new lineup can help you be more competitive. First, ABB now offers the most advanced and comprehensive one line on the market today. So when you are estimating that project, you can be confident that ABB will have the full portfolio you need, whether your job is basic construction project or you need a little more advanced functionality. And now, all these products are available through over 1,500 distributor locations across the U.S. Second, Don just reminded us how labor is one of your biggest expenses. To help you optimize your projects, we have designed the common panels you install every day to be modular for single-person installation. We have also added several labor savings features, including up to 5 subfeeds in a single ReliGear lighting panel board, TMAX XT plug-in circuit breakers in ReliGear Next Power panel boards and ReliGear switchboards, angled lifting brackets, hinge splice plates, captive hardware, and much, much more throughout the line. And third, GE was among the first to bring you modern electrical distribution products in the U.S. market. Now, as a result of the acquisition, ABB's most advanced circuit breakers and cutting-edge technologies, like the TMAX XT molded case circuit breaker, are integrated across the ReliGear portfolio, not just for your new construction projects, but also with retrofit solutions for the vast GE installed base, so you can upgrade facilities without installing new equipment. To find out more information on the ReliGear Smart Power Distribution products, please visit our website at electrification.us.abb. I appreciate your time today, and I will pass it back to you, Mike.
All right, thanks so much, Rochelle. Appreciate you giving a little overview of the new product line there. Fantastic equipment. And Don, thanks so much. Fantastic presentation on really high-level look at estimating and also giving us some real detail as you went along through some examples. Much appreciated. So with that, we're going to jump right into some Q&A here in the last few minutes of the hour that we had set aside. So, in looking at some of the questions that came in, Don, in one of your earlier slides, you had a visual that showed the 8 tabs in your notebook, and somebody kind of missed out on what those were. If you could kind of just run through those again real quick, that person would appreciate it.
Okay, let me see if I can, I think I can find that. Bear with me a second here. So the tabs are, again, you may want to put 8, you may want 12, you may want 6. But the first tab is the invitation to bid and the RFQ proposals. The next one is RFIs, any of my spec notes. Tab number 3 is addendas that I've received. Tab number 4 is my printed estimate. Tab number 5 is my bid summary after I've summarized the project. Tab number 6 are all of my quotations for my quoted packages, specialty cable. Tab number 7 is my takeoff sheets or any scribbly notes that I've made about anything that I designed or something like that. And then tab number 8 would be any spec sections that I may have printed, or if I had a loose spec, maybe I downloaded the drawings and I didn't have a hard set of copy, but I printed them from the digital download. I may want to print my specs and put it in my estimate book, but that's the way I handled that one. Mike, there was one question I wanted to answer that I think is vital that I happened to see in the Q&A, and if I can do that, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead and jump in.
Let me just take this one and then I'll give it back. But somebody asked me, do I measure all of my branch wiring? I've had this discussion a lot with people, and I'll make this statement. On commercial projects, I'm not talking about industrial projects. I'm talking about commercial. Estimates are won and lost on how well and how accurate the branch wiring is taken off. It's a large portion of your estimating time, and I know guys want to reduce that time, so they start coming up with averages, and they want to. But let me give you something to think about. Everybody, think about this. If I average 15 feet for my branch wiring on all of my lights and all of my receptacles, but in reality it was 18 feet. Well, you think that 3 feet is not a whole lot, but 3 feet of 15 feet is 20%. So now you're going to be 20% short on all of the branch wiring, all of the lighting circuits, all of the branch receptacle circuits, and everything you averaged. And I can assure you, if you want to be a great estimator, you will learn to be accurate, detailed, and very efficient estimating branch wiring. Don't look for shortcuts that lead to inaccurate results.
All right, Don, thanks for catching that one and addressing it. I think this is another good question, especially for where we're at right now with the market and trying to recover from COVID and get into better times. This individual asks, how would you account for material escalation in current market conditions?
Obviously, material escalation, I had a crystal ball, but it quit working last week. I always look at the copper, but I can tell you, if you can ever come up with a great formula for material escalation, again, in Trimble AccuBid Classic software, I have the ability to adjust certain material categories by a percentage. But if I had the ability to know what I was going to buy copper for on bid day, I wouldn't be an estimator trainer. I'd be working on Wall Street.
Good answer. Okay. This is an interesting question for you. How do you feel about subbing out estimates to estimating companies, and how accurate do you think they are?
Yeah, I know that could be a lengthy answer, but I will say that I'm not of a freelance estimating spirit. I believe to be a good estimator, you've got to be an estimating for more than a paycheck. And freelance estimators are in it for a paycheck. And hey, we all are in business to make money, and I'm a capitalist through and through. But I think the greatest advantage for the contractor and the best will be to find the right person. And I think the greatest quality of an electrical estimator is desire. If the person doesn't have the desire to be a good, quality, skilled electrical estimator, you're wasting your time. And for those who are estimating and you're truly not passionate about estimating, either get the passion or do your company a favor and ask your boss to reassign you, because to be a good, quality, skilled estimator, you got to be passionate about it. And because it is a high level, very intense project. Freelance estimating to me is I just don't think they have enough skin in the game that's just me.
All right. Thanks for being honest with your thoughts there. Appreciate it. Early in the presentation, Don, you mentioned, and this person just wants to make sure they heard you correctly when you said this. So you're saying not to double check the plans?
For the most part, yes. I'm saying the estimator must get skilled. Okay, I have a philosophy. I can make another dollar, but I can never make another minute. So while I have the drawing on my table and I'm estimating the lighting on the first floor of the building, I'm not leaving until I know and I've checked it and double checked it. So once I leave it, I know that I'm complete. I don't have to revisit it. No, technically, I don't go back and double check it. I'm not leaving it until I've double checked it. I don't have time to double check it. I got other things to do.
Okay, great. Well, I think we've gotten through the questions we can at this point in time. We're kind of up at the hour point, so I don't want to overextend and get into somebody's personal time there that they had not set aside. So with that, I'd just like to say, before we sign off, thank you very much, Don, for a wonderful presentation. It's always great to have you as a speaker with ECNM webinars. Thank you to ABB for making today's event possible by sponsoring it. We really appreciate our partnership with ABB. And I'd like to also remind everyone, we had many questions come in about will there be an on-demand or recording version of this webcast available? And yes, there will be. We post that on the ECNM website for a period of 1 year. And you'll get the link to that recording probably in the next 24 hours. You'll get an email from us that'll have that link. Please feel free to visit it, listen to the session again. If you missed something or didn't see some of the slides, you might have come in a little late. You can always review it that way. And feel free to share it with other people so that they can sign up and view the on-demand version as well. So again, thanks to everyone for attending today, and have a great remainder of your day.